Long before the first ship broke its icy waters, Antarctica was not a place but an echo, a whisper on ancient maps, a phantom continent born of logic and myth, an obsession that for centuries lurked at the edges of human imagination. Its story does not begin with the crack of ice beneath the boots of an explorer, but in the minds of thinkers who, gazing at the stars, sought to decipher the shape of our world. It was the ancient Greeks who first dreamed of it. Not out of evidence, but out of necessity. Philosophers like Ptolemy in the 2nd century theorized about a terra australis, a vast landmass in the south that must exist to balance the weight of the continents in the north. On their maps, it was an uncertain blot, a promise of symmetry on a planet yet to be discovered. This place was not a destination, but an idea, a philosophical dream that fueled legends of impossible lands and fantastic creatures beyond the known horizon. This philosophical dream transformed into a feverish obsession during the Age of Discoveries. Beginning in the 15th century, as empires like Spain and Portugal set out to conquer the globe, the search for terra australis became the ultimate prize. The yearning for knowledge intertwined with the thirst for gold and glory. Explorers like Ferdinand Magellan ventured southward, pursuing not only new trade routes but also the echo of this legendary land, rumoured to harbour unimaginable riches. In his epic journey of 1519, Magellan navigated the strait that today bears his name, making his way into the vast Pacific Ocean. He brushed against the limits of the known world. But the white continent remained invisible, hidden behind a veil of storms and a sea strewn with ice. The expeditions that followed encountered the same disheartening reality, a raging ocean that seemed to guard a secret. Yet each ship returning with tales of colossal icebergs and frozen seas only stoked the flames of the myth. But this hunt for a phantom continent was more than a mere geographical adventure. It reflected the growing geopolitical tensions of the time. European powers competed in an unrelenting race to map and claim every corner of the planet. Terra Australis became a symbol of power, a trophy that would bestow immense prestige upon whoever found it. This quest became a driving force of exploration, pushing ships ever further south toward the frustration and icy certainty that the continent resisted being found. Gradually, cartography began to reflect this obsession. Geographers like Martin Waldseemüller in the 16th century drew on their maps a vast Antarctic continent, a hypothetical landmass that filled the southern void. Maps became a canvas for the dreams and fears of humanity. But the real continent remained a ghost, a distant echo in a world expanding at a dizzying pace. This relentless search reveals the essence of human nature, a curiosity that knows no bounds, a desire for conquest, and a profound need to name the unknown. What force drove these men to challenge the fury of the oceans and stare death in the face at the ends of the earth? The answer lies in the longing to leave an indelible mark on history, to etch their names into the blank spaces of the map. After centuries of speculation, daring voyages, and bitter disappointments, Antarctica remained an enigma, a legacy of unfulfilled dreams, a promise whispered in the fog of time. The first mentions of icy lands not only left their mark on maps, but also planted the questions that would drive the greatest adventures in history. The white continent awaited patiently for those willing to risk everything, not for a myth, but for the raw and majestic reality. The next chapter of this saga was about to be written, and with it, the boundary between legend and history would begin to fade forever. If you're enjoying the video, give it a like and subscribe to see more content from the channel. The search for unexplored lands intensified to become an obsession for the European powers of the 18th century, a resonance of ancient legends that vibrated in the minds of explorers, scientists, and rulers. The Terra Australis Incognita, that immense continent theorized to exist in the southern hemisphere, transformed into the unknown horizon that propelled humanity across uncharted seas and enigmatic territories. During this time, the zeal for discovery merged with political and economic ambition, creating a conducive environment for expeditions that would redefine the map of the world. By the conclusion of the 17th century, Europe was undergoing a profound transformation. Advances in cartography, along with the insatiable curiosity of the Enlightenment, motivated nations to seek new territories. In this context, the idea of an unknown continent at the southernmost extreme began to solidify. The exploration of the oceans, an activity in full swing, offered the promise of undiscovered riches and unparalleled strategic potential. However, it also generated fear of the unknown, of a world imagined to be shrouded in ice and shadows. Among the key figures of this era was King Louis XV of France, who, with his imperial vision, promoted exploration in search of the Terra Australis. In the year 1738, the Academy of Sciences of France dispatched the expedition of Jean-François de Gallo, Count of La Pérouse, to investigate and map the waters of the Pacific and, by extension, the coasts of this mythical land of the south. However, it was the British James Cook, a man of humble origins but an exceptionally skilled sailor, who would emerge as the pioneer of Antarctic exploration. The first of Cook's 3 expeditions, between the years 1768 and 1771, set sail with a clear objective: to observe the transit of Venus from Tahiti and, in the process, explore and map the unknown continent. As his ship, the Endeavour, navigated the waters of the Pacific Ocean, the mystery of the Terra Australis became increasingly captivating. During his journey, Cook not only mapped new islands but also left a legacy of discovery that would endure through the centuries. In the year 1772, Cook embarked on his second voyage, this time with the explicit intention of locating the Terra Australis. Aboard his new ship, the Resolution, he ventured into icy waters, facing turbulent seas and the severity of the Antarctic climate. In his tireless search, Cook reached latitudes never before achieved by any navigator. Despite his bravery and determination, the continent he had been seeking remained elusive. However, the question persisted: was the Terra Australis beyond his line of sight, hidden in the depths of ice and fog? Cook's expedition not only had geographical consequences but also altered European perceptions of the southern hemisphere. Narratives about icy seas and uninhabited islands began to populate the imagination of the time, opening the door to future attempts at exploration. Nevertheless, the enigma of the Antarctic continent remained intact, a shadow cast over maritime exploration. The decisions of the leaders and explorers of the time revealed a complex mix of ambition and fear of the unknown. As the search for the Terra Australis Incognita progressed, the immediate repercussions of these expeditions became evident. The cartography of the ocean became more precise, and the understanding of the climate and geography of the southern hemisphere laid the groundwork for future explorations. However, the most profound impact was the shift in worldview. The idea that there were lands yet to be discovered, that the horizon could conceal unimaginable secrets, fueled the ambition of new generations of explorers. And so the resonance of these expeditions extended through time, leaving a legacy that would reach far beyond the mere search for a lost continent. The mystery of the Terra Australis Incognita became a symbol of the human spirit, of the relentless curiosity that drives us to challenge the limits of the known. The question remains: what secrets still awaited in the depths of that vast and icy continent? As the path southward opened, the figure of James Cook solidified as a beacon in the darkness of ignorance, a precursor to modern exploration. But his story would not be the last in this quest for the unknown horizon. In the next chapter, the accounts of his journey will intertwine with the bold decisions that would mark a new milestone in Antarctic exploration: his attempt to circumnavigate the continent without sighting solid land. The boundary between knowledge and mystery would begin to blur even further in the history of humanity. The search for uncharted lands and the thirst for adventure intensified in the 18th century, when maritime powers began to glimpse the possibility of conquering what was considered a vast continent in the far south. In this context, the name of James Cook emerged as a central figure in the twilight of exploration. With the resonance of his exploits vibrating in the halls of London, Cook was set to unravel the mysteries of the ocean surrounding Antarctica. Although his journey would not culminate in the sighting of land, but rather in an unprecedented circumnavigation that would challenge the conceptions of the time, by the end of the 60s of that century, the United Kingdom was in a state of fervour. British colonies were expanding and maritime trade was flourishing, but the interest in exploring new routes and territories had reached a peak. The desire for knowledge and imperial ambition intertwined, driving the nation southward into the unknown. In this vortex of aspirations, Cook's figure stood out not only as a skilled navigator, but as a bold cartographer, determined to leave his mark on history. James Cook, a man of modest origins, had risen in the social scale thanks to his expertise in the art of navigation. His first great expedition, undertaken between 1768 and 1771, took him to the Pacific, where he created maps that would change the world's perspective. Upon his return, the Royal Society, eager for more discoveries, appointed him for a new mission. This time, the objective was clear: to explore the southernmost latitudes in a quest that promised to unveil the hidden truths in the icy waters of the south. In 1772, Cook set sail with his ship, the HMS Resolution, accompanied by his support vessel, the HMS Adventure. The journey would be monumental. It was not only about navigating unknown waters, but also about challenging the entrenched beliefs regarding the existence of a vast land in the far south. With a small but determined crew on board, Cook faced a sea that had been an enigma for centuries. The promise of new lands mingled with the fear of the unknown, a mystery that began to seduce human curiosity. Cook's journey became an odyssey of endurance. As he ventured into the icy waters, the conditions grew relentless. Storms and ice presented challenges that threatened to divert the course of his mission. However, Captain Cook navigated with determination, finding in his compass and knowledge the guidance to advance in an ocean that seemed intent on keeping its secrets at all costs. But as days turned into weeks, the reality became more perplexing. The promised lands did not appear. In January of 1773, Cook reached the southernmost point of his journey, finding himself south of the Antarctic Circle. At that moment, man and sea became one entity, facing the immensity of an icy continent that had never been seen by European eyes. Despite the proximity, Cook never sighted the solid land that had been the subject of so much speculation. Instead, he found himself surrounded by a vastness of ice and water, an unyielding reminder of untamed nature and the fragility of human ambition. Cook's circumnavigation extended over more than 3 years. And although he did not manage to sight the land he sought, his journey was not in vain. His meticulous observations and precise maps contributed to the understanding of the Antarctic Ocean and its currents. Cook had not only challenged the perceptions of his time, but had also left a legacy that would resonate through the centuries. Upon his return to England, he was hailed as a national hero, but the mystery remained. Why had he not sighted the land that was believed to exist? The immediate impact of this expedition was profound. Subsequent explorations were based on his findings and maps, and the search for the mythical Terra Australis continued with renewed fervour. Cook had established a new standard in exploration, but his journey also left unanswered questions. What secrets still awaited in the depths of the ocean? Did a hidden continent truly exist, or was it merely a resonance of the fantasies of an era? As Cook's figure rose as a colossus in the history of exploration, the shadow of his enigma lengthened. His circumnavigation had demonstrated that the beliefs of yesteryear could crumble before reality. But it had also fueled curiosity about what lay beyond the known boundaries. In this corner of the world where glaciers rise like giants of ice, the mystery of Antarctica remained intact, awaiting new expeditions to unravel it. As the influence of Cook's achievements settled, Other voices began to emerge, claiming the stage of Antarctic exploration. The arrival of new technologies and the desire for more ambitious adventures propelled nations southward. The heroic age of exploration was about to begin, and with it, the promise of revelations that would forever change the understanding of Antarctica and its secrets. This quest for knowledge and exploration would soon transform into a colossal ambition, a race to uncover the secrets of the frozen continent that had remained in the shadows of human imagination. By the end of the 19th century, the resonance of the first dreams of ice vibrated in the minds of bold explorers who, driven by an insatiable desire to unravel the unknown, ventured beyond the limits of civilization. In this climate of growing curiosity and competition, the heroic age of Antarctic exploration was about to begin. The historical context of this crucial phase is set against a backdrop of imperial fervor and technological advancements. European powers, eager to expand their territories and resources, looked southward in hopes of finding new trade routes and unexplored lands. Amid this race, Antarctica, with its vast expanse of ice and mystery, became the last bastion of adventure. The Industrial Revolution had provided explorers with the necessary tools to undertake these journeys. Sturdier ships, better maps, and scientific knowledge that allowed for a better understanding of the challenges posed by extreme weather. Among the pioneers of this era was the British William Speirs Bruce, a man whose name would stand out in the chronicles of Antarctic exploration. In the year 1892, Bruce organized the first scientific expedition to Antarctica aboard the ship Scotia. However, his journey was not merely an attempt to reach new lands, but an effort to understand the geography and meteorology of the continent. Bruce's decision to combine adventure with science marked a new approach that would influence subsequent expeditions. The question that arises is whether his intention was simply to discover, or if there was a deeper desire to leave a legacy in a world that was increasingly perceived as smaller. On the 18th of January in the year 1898, the Scotia set sail from Scotland, carrying with it a group of scientists and explorers. The voyage was marked by unforeseen challenges, from relentless storms to the constant struggle against the cold. But Bruce's determination was unyielding. Upon reaching the shores of Antarctica, his team encountered a breathtaking landscape where ice mountains rose like sleeping giants, guarding the secrets of a forgotten world. Through this experience, Bruce not only collected data on Antarctic fauna and geography, but also left a clear message: exploration could be both scientific and heroic. In the wake of Bruce's expedition, other nations began to set their sights on Antarctica. In the year 1901, the Swedish explorer Otto Nordenskjöld embarked on an ambitious mission that would take him to explore the region of the Antarctic Peninsula. His journey, fraught with dangers, would also be the stage for a significant discovery: the interaction between explorers and the local fauna, especially the colonies of penguins and seals that inhabited the coasts. However, Nordenskjöld's journey also revealed the inherent difficulties of Antarctic exploration, a constant struggle between human ambition and relentless nature. The decisions of these pioneers were guided by a spirit of competition, where each advancement was crucial for establishing a nation's claim over the frozen continent. Meanwhile, the legacy of the explorers intertwined with a deeper enigma: what mysteries awaited in the depths of Antarctica? The thirst for knowledge became a powerful force, but each discovery raised more questions than answers. The immediate consequences of these explorations began to shape the global perception of Antarctica. The scientific community started to recognize the importance of the continent not only as a place of adventure, but as a natural laboratory that offered crucial data on the climate and biodiversity of the planet. The information gathered by Bruce, Nordenskjöld, and others laid the groundwork for future research, leaving a legacy that would endure beyond their lives. However, the Antarctic ecosystem, with its inherent fragility, also awakened a sense of responsibility in the explorers, who realized that their ambition could have negative consequences for the environment. In this context of discovery and challenge, a troubling question arose: Could the exploration of Antarctica, in its quest to unravel its secrets, become a harmful act for the continent itself? The explorers, while seeking to understand, were also altering the delicate balance of life on the continent. This duality between curiosity and responsibility would become a recurring theme in future expeditions. The heroic age of Antarctic exploration was defined not only by the men who ventured into its cold waters, but also by the decisions they made, which laid the foundations for international scientific cooperation in the 20th century. Each expedition, each sacrifice, and each discovery intertwined with a greater mystery, a resonance of questions that would endure long after the voices of the explorers had faded. As the 19th century drew to a close, Antarctica began to be seen not only as a place of adventure, but as a destination where dreams of glory and the desire for knowledge intertwined in a tapestry of human ambition. The next adventure, the first to spend a winter on the frozen continent, would mark a milestone in the history of exploration. And so, the next chapter was preparing to unveil the story of the Belgian expedition led by Adrien de Gerlache, an episode that would not only challenge the limits of humanity, but also reveal the hidden secrets beneath the ice of Antarctica. It was a time of bravery and discovery, where each expedition became an odyssey into the unknown. The history of Antarctic exploration would take a significant turn with the arrival of the Belgian expedition led by Adrien de Gerlache, a man whose name would resonate in the annals of polar history. In the context of the late 19th century, when European powers competed to expand their horizons, Antarctica remained a vast enigma, a continent shrouded in ice and mysteries. The political and social climate of the time was marked by a fervor of nationalism and an insatiable desire for scientific glory. This was the environment that allowed de Gerlache's adventurous spirit to emerge. Adrien de Gerlache, a renowned Belgian sailor and explorer, had begun his naval career at a time when polar expeditions were becoming a true European fascination. However, his ambition went beyond merely charting new routes. He wished to be the first to conduct a comprehensive exploration of the Antarctic continent, including the bold decision to spend a winter in these frozen lands. His vision was supported by the Belgian government, which saw the opportunity to gain international prestige just like its rivals. Thus, in the year 1997, de Gerlache assembled a crew of brave men and a ship, the Belgica, which would be their home on this journey to the end of the world. With the wind at their backs, the Belgica set sail from Antwerp in August of 1997, but not without first facing a series of challenges. The crew, composed of 19 men, included scientists, a photographer, and a naturalist, all eager to discover the wonders that Antarctica had to offer. As the ship ventured into unknown waters, anticipation mingled with uncertainty. What secrets would the white continent unveil? But the true challenge was yet to come, as the Antarctic winter loomed over them like an ominous shadow. By the end of January of 1998, the Belgica reached the Antarctic Peninsula, where it became trapped in relentless ice. What had been planned as an exploratory expedition turned into a struggle for survival. The decision to remain during the winter, although risky, became a crucial turning point. De Gerlache and his crew faced the dilemma of continuing their quest for knowledge or accepting the fate that the ice had reserved for them. Anxiety and tension mounted as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The darkness of the Antarctic winter enveloped the Belgica and its crew in an overwhelming silence, a silence so profound that it seemed to hold the echoes of ancient legends that spoke of men lost in the frozen vastness. During those months, life aboard transformed. Daily routines adapted to the extreme circumstances. The crew faced food shortages, diseases such as scurvy, and growing despair. De Gerlache's decisions became increasingly critical. Was he prepared to lead his crew toward hope, or would they remain trapped in this labyrinth of ice? Amidst this struggle, moments of discovery and wonder emerged. Scientific explorations, astronomical observations, and the study of Antarctic wildlife. human curiosity did not extinguish, even in the most adverse conditions. Finally, the spring of 1999 brought with it a glimmer of hope. After more than a year trapped, the Belgica managed to free itself from the ice in March. The journey back home was a mix of relief and reflection. The experience had left an indelible mark on each of the men aboard. Upon arriving in Belgium, the legacy of de Gerlach's expedition was already written. They had been the first to survive an Antarctic winter, a milestone that would resonate in future explorations. However, what secrets remained hidden beneath the layers of ice? Was there more to their findings than what was revealed to the world? The story of the Belgian expedition is a testament to bravery and determination, but it also raises questions about the mysteries that still lie at the heart of Antarctica. The journey of Adrien de Gerlach and his crew is an invitation to delve into the shadows of history, where knowledge and mystery often walk hand in hand. With the resonance of this expedition echoing through history, Antarctica would continue to whisper its secrets to those who dared to explore them. The next stage in this quest for answers about the frozen continent will lead us to the iconic figure of Ernest Shackleton, who, in his unwavering desire to discover the limits of the South, would mark a new chapter in the history of Antarctic exploration. What adventures and dangers awaited on the horizon? If you're enjoying the video, give it a like and subscribe to see more content from the channel. That tireless quest for the conquest of the South Pole would soon find a new protagonist in the vast white expanse of Antarctica. In 1909, human ambition would resonate through the ice. As British explorer Ernest Shackleton ventured into the frozen continent, challenging the limitations of his time and nature itself, the historical context surrounding Shackleton was one of fervent exploration and competition. By the end of the 19th century, European nations had begun to chart more accurate maps of the southern land, and the spirit of the heroic age of polar exploration was at its peak, as the scientific community became fascinated by the mysteries of the ice. The desire to reach the South Pole had become a symbol of bravery and glory. In this scenario, England, immersed in a deep rivalry with other powers, viewed Antarctic exploration as a matter of national pride. Ernest Shackleton, born in 1874, was a man with a marked destiny. From his youth, he had felt the call of the South, an attraction that resonated within him. His first foray into the world of exploration occurred as part of the Nimrod expedition, which was preparing to embark on a journey that would take him to the heart of the frozen continent. However, it was not only his desire for fame that motivated Shackleton. There was a profound sense of duty to carry with him the representation of his country in a challenge that few dared to face. The key decisions made by Shackleton and his team were fundamental to the development of this expedition. In 1907, Shackleton led a mission that had been conceived to reach the South Pole, but also to conduct scientific research in the region. Among his collaborators were figures such as geologist Thomas H. Mawson and naturalist Edward Wilson. Each of them brought invaluable experience and a burning desire to unravel the secrets that Antarctica concealed. It was this collaboration that paved the way to the unknown. On the 1st of January in 1908, the Nimrod expedition set sail from London with a crew of 15 men aboard the ship, which had been specially adapted to face the harsh Antarctic weather. On the horizon, the frozen continent loomed like an enigma, a challenge that promised both glory and danger. As the Nimrod ventured into the waters of the Southern Ocean, the atmosphere grew tense, charged with expectations and fears. After months of travel, on the 8th of January in 1909, Shackleton and his team finally reached the coast of Antarctica, where they established their base camp at a site they called Camp of the Great Barrier. From there, the expedition launched into its explorations. As they moved southward, Shackleton and his men entered a landscape that seemed to defy the laws of nature. Ice mountains rose like colossi, and the vastness of the infinite white stretched as far as the eye could see. It was a place where time seemed to stand still, and where the cold bit the skin with an almost supernatural ferocity. On the 9th of October, Shackleton and his men began the ascent toward the South Pole. The journey was a grueling testament to endurance and sacrifice. The men faced relentless storms, extreme temperatures, and exhaustion that threatened to consume them. Each step was a battle against the hostile environment. But Shackleton's determination never wavered. He was a natural leader, a man who inspired trust and camaraderie among his men, even in the darkest moments. Finally, on the 9th of January in 1909, Shackleton and his companions reached the southernmost point that had been reached to date, just 88 degrees and 23 minutes of southern latitude. They had gone farther than anyone before them, but the dream of the South Pole had faded into the distance. Despite not having reached their ultimate goal, the achievement was monumental and would resonate in the annals of polar exploration history. However, the question lingers: was this triumph enough? What secrets did the frozen continent still hold in its heart? The return home was a journey filled with challenges. The trek back to civilization was marked by the same struggle against nature that they had faced in their advance. Shackleton and his crew confronted a new enigma, one that would force them to test their limits and the resilience of their spirit. After weeks of hardship, they finally arrived in New Zealand, where they were welcomed as heroes. Their feat had captured the imagination of the world, but the resonance of the question remained: had they left behind something more than just a simple dream of conquest? The consequences of the Nimrod expedition were not limited to Shackleton's achievements. His legacy extended to the scientific community, which began to recognize the importance of Antarctica not only as a terrain for exploration, but as a vital field for research. The expedition had provided valuable geological and meteorological data, opening the door to future investigations in the region. However, the shadow of the South Pole continued to loom. The ambition to reach the most remote place on the planet remained alive, fueled by the desire to uncover its hidden secrets. Thus, the enigma surrounding Antarctic exploration deepened. Shackleton had achieved a significant milestone, but his story was far from over. The race for the South Pole was about to intensify, with the arrival of new explorers preparing to challenge the limits of ice and human endurance. As the international community prepared for what was to come, a new figure emerged on the horizon: Roald Amundsen, a Norwegian explorer whose name would become synonymous with audacity and success. Shackleton's story had planted the seed of a competition that would define polar exploration in the years to come. Was the world truly prepared for what was about to unfold in the frozen heart of Antarctica? The answer, as we well know, would reveal itself in the days to come. This relentless pursuit of glory and recognition would soon transform into an epic duel, one that would resonate through the years, marking an era of Antarctic exploration. In the cold and desolate land of the White Continent, two men, Roald Amundsen and Robert Falcon Scott, were preparing to embark on a race to the South Pole, a destination that promised not only prestige but also immortality in the annals of history. The decade of 1910 witnessed a renewed fervour for polar exploration, a reflection of Victorian dreams of conquest and discovery. Europe, affected by political and social tensions, looked towards the unknown south with a mix of ambition and fear. The last decades of the 19th century had seen numerous attempts to reach the pole, but none had succeeded. Antarctica, shrouded in a veil of mystery, had become the last great challenge for adventurers, a frontier that promised glory and, at the same time, death. In this context, Amundsen, a Norwegian of indomitable spirit, had decided to change the course of his original expedition, which was destined for the North Pole, and head instead towards the South Pole. This change, which may seem minor, was a crucial decision that reflected his keen perception of opportunities. Amundsen, a man who had learned from his experiences in the Arctic, understood the importance of meticulous preparation and adaptation to the rigors of the environment. His pragmatic approach and knowledge of the techniques of the indigenous peoples of the region, such as the Inuit, provided him with a strategic advantage over his competitors. On the other hand, Scott, an officer of the British Royal Navy, found himself under pressure to restore British prestige in polar exploration. His expedition, which set out in 1910, was conceived not only as an attempt to reach the pole but also as an effort to carry out scientific research. Scott, a principled man, aimed to demonstrate that science could coexist with adventure, a noble ideal that, however, would lead him to make decisions that would prove fatal later on. The preparation for the expedition reflected the contrast between the two men. Amundsen, with his utilitarian approach, surrounded himself with a team of survival experts, optimizing his logistics and ensuring that every detail was carefully considered. In contrast, Scott relied on British tradition, opting for a more classic and romantic approach to exploration. His decisions, such as choosing a group of men with diverse abilities and including a large scientific team, although valuable in theory, led him to underestimate the challenges he would face on his journey south. On the 19th of October in 1911, both teams set out for the pole in a race that would soon become desperate. Amundsen, who had begun his journey from Whale Bay, advanced with firmness and determination. Using dog sleds, a strategy that had proven effective in his previous expeditions, he managed to cover impressive distances day after day. Each advance, each step towards the pole, was the result of his years of preparation and dedication. On the other hand, Scott, who departed from a different base but with the same objective, found himself dealing with adverse weather and challenging terrain. Despite his efforts, his choice to use ponies for transport proved disastrous. The animals, ill-suited to the icy terrain, were slow and often weakened by the harsh conditions. While Amundsen advanced swiftly, Scott found himself trapped in a labyrinth of ice and snow, a frozen prison that threatened to consume his hopes. The development of the race became increasingly tense. In December of 1911, Amundsen and his team reached the South Pole, stepping onto the ground that had been the dream of generations of explorers. At that precise moment, victory was not only his, but also for a new era of polar exploration. The news of his arrival at the pole, which would be announced to the world with great pomp, completely shocked the scientific community and the public at large. However, this victory was overshadowed by the shadow of fate that awaited Scott. Scott's team finally reached the South Pole on the 17th of January in 1912, only to discover Amundsen's legacy. The Norwegian flag waved in the wind, a reminder that their ambition had been surpassed. The emotional impact was devastating for Scott and his team, who found themselves in a desperate situation, trapped in the ice and suffering from extreme exhaustion. Their decisions, which initially seemed just and honourable, now revealed themselves as part of an impending tragedy. The consequences of this polar race were profound and multifaceted. Amundsen returned to Norway as a hero, while Scott's image became a symbol of sacrifice and bravery. However, the tragedy did not end with Scott's arrival at the pole. His return journey, fraught with adversities, would culminate in his death and that of his team, an outcome that would leave an indelible mark on the history of exploration. The question of whether it was merely a lack of preparation that led to his fatal fate, or if there was a deeper mystery behind his misfortune, remains open. The resonance of this race, filled with strategic decisions, fatal errors, and an atmosphere of fierce rivalry, raises questions that still linger. How far is a man willing to go for glory? What cost does the desire to be first entail? And perhaps most unsettling, what secrets still awaited in the depths of Antarctica, waiting to be discovered by those who dare to cross the frontier of the known into the enigma? As we delve into the next chapter, we will prepare to unveil Amundsen's triumph, a moment of glory that became a milestone in history, but also left a legacy of loss and reflection in its wake. That reckless race to the South Pole had reached a climax filled with tension and ambition. As ice storms battered the region, one name began to resonate strongly in the realm of polar exploration: Roald Amundsen. His success would not only mark a milestone in the history of exploration, but also reveal a profound mystery about the nature of the human spirit and its unyielding desire to conquer the unexplored. Historical context. The beginning of the 20th century was marked by a fervor for exploration. European powers competed to discover new territories, and Antarctica had become a focal point of that ambition, in a world where colonialism and territorial expansion dominated thought. The idea of conquering the South Pole was seen as the final frontier. The rivalry between nations intensified with each expedition. Each failed attempt, and the lives lost along the way fueled the myth of the frozen continent. The legacy of Shackleton's exploration in 1909, which had reached the closest point to the pole, reverberated among aspiring explorers. But there was an enigma that needed to be solved. Who would be the first to plant their flag at the South Pole? Key characters and decisions. Roald Amundsen, a Norwegian born in 1872, had forged his path to glory through a series of Arctic expeditions that granted him considerable experience in extreme weather. Unlike his British rival Robert Falcon Scott, who represented a nation filled with imperial pride, Amundsen embodied a pragmatic and methodical approach to exploration. In 1910, Amundsen made a crucial decision: to change his original course toward the North Pole and secretly head to the South Pole. This choice would not only demonstrate his cunning but also reveal an unyielding determination to achieve what others considered an impossible dream. Amundsen assembled a team of selected men, each with specific skills that would be vital for the journey. Among them was his loyal companion Olaf Bjaaland, an expert skier, and Helmer Hansen, a skilled sailor. This small group would embark on an odyssey that would take them to the limits of human endurance. The decision to use dog sleds instead of the less efficient transportation methods employed by Scott would become a key strategic advantage, a testament to Amundsen's ingenuity. Development of events. On the 9th of August in 1910, Amundsen's ship, the Fram, set sail from Norway toward an unknown destination. In a sea of uncertainty and danger, the crew faced countless challenges. Upon reaching the Antarctic coast, Amundsen found a world that seemed to be drawn from a frozen dream. With meticulous focus, he established his base camp in the Bay of Whales, a location that would provide him with the necessary logistics for the expedition to the pole. The journey to the South Pole began on the 19th of October in 1911. With fierce determination, Amundsen and his team ventured into the white vastness, traversing glaciers and facing storms that threatened to divert their path. The meticulousness of their planning became evident. Every ration of food and every sled was perfectly designed to maximize efficiency. For weeks, the struggle against extreme cold and adverse conditions became routine, and the unity of the group became their greatest strength. On the 14th of December in 1911, after more than 2 months of arduous travel, Amundsen and his men reached the South Pole. The scene was breathtaking. A vast mantle of snow and ice stretched before them, a symbol of their victory and a testament to the sacrifice made. Planting the Norwegian flag, Amundsen sealed his place in history, becoming the first human to reach the South Pole. However, this victory, though glorious, was not without shadows. Immediate consequences. Amundsen's success had immediate repercussions in the realm of polar exploration. The news of his conquest spread rapidly, overshadowing the efforts of his rival Scott, who set out for the South Pole shortly after Amundsen and faced a tragic fate on the return journey. While the world celebrated Amundsen's triumph, the shadow of tragedy loomed over Scott's efforts, turning his expedition into a grim reminder of the inherent dangers of exploration. Amundsen's victory also brought about a shift in the perception of Antarctic exploration. His pragmatic approach and ability to adapt to circumstances challenged the romantic notion of the heroic explorer. Instead of seeking glory at any cost, Amundsen demonstrated that preparation and strategy were as important as physical courage. Thus, his legacy became a beacon for future expeditions, an influence that would resonate through time. The enigma of the chapter. But what secrets truly awaited in Antarctica? Despite his success, Amundsen also left an unresolved mystery: the ephemeral nature of glory. As his name solidified in history, the tragedy of Scott raised fundamental questions about competition, ambition, and human nature. In his pursuit of fame, had Amundsen forgotten the fragility of life on the ice? Antarctica, with its vast unexplored territories, remained an enigma, a reminder that every victory on the ice carries its own sacrifice. As the resonance of triumphs and tragedies reverberated across the frozen continent, the story of Antarctic exploration moved toward new chapters. The next stage, marked by the tragedy of Scott, would reveal not only the dangers of exploration but also the internal struggle of a man caught between ambition and survival. What lessons could be learned from such sacrifices, and how would these stories impact future generations of explorers? The question that lingers in the air is unsettling yet inevitable. In a world where glory and tragedy coexist, who truly is the real hero of the ice? That competition for supremacy at the South Pole had left indelible marks on the spirit of the explorers. While the joy of Amundsen's triumph reverberated in Europe, a shadow loomed over the remnants of Scott's expedition. In a world where exploration intertwined with ambition and tragedy, the story of Robert Falcon Scott emerges as an enigma that continues to fascinate and disturb those who delve into the narratives of the heroic age. In the context of the early 20th century, Antarctic exploration had become a symbol of national prestige. The competition among nations was at its peak, and the quest for the South Pole symbolized not only the conquest of the unknown, but also the validation of the imperial spirit. Great Britain, still at the height of its empire, felt the pressure to demonstrate its greatness and determination. In this scenario, Robert Falcon Scott, a sailor of the Royal Navy and a determined explorer, prepared for a journey that would become a dark chapter in the history of exploration. Scott had been a pioneer in his own previous expeditions, but Amundsen's arrival at the South Pole in December of 1911 left him in a desperate situation. Aware that history would remember him as the second to arrive, Scott decided to undertake a journey that would challenge not only his physical endurance but also the loyalty and lives of his team. With a fervent desire to reclaim his place in history, Scott and his expedition departed from their base in the Ross Sea in November of 1911, with a team composed of 5 men, including Edward Wilson and Henry Bowers, among others. From the outset, the challenges were overwhelming. The men faced relentless storms, extreme temperatures, and the unyielding Antarctic ice that seemed to come alive beneath their feet. As they advanced southward, the environment grew increasingly hostile. Scott's decisions became critical. He chose to carry insufficient supplies in his attempt to reach the pole, convinced that speed was essential to outpace his Norwegian rival. However, this choice, driven by the desire to be first, would soon turn into a grave mistake. On the 17th of January in 1912, Scott and his team finally reached the South Pole, only to find the Norwegian flag waving in the wind, a palpable reminder of their failure. The arrival at the pole, instead of being a triumph, became a moment of profound disillusionment. At that very instant, the resonance of Amundsen's victory vibrated in their minds, while the reality of their own situation began to sink into their hearts. Sadness and frustration overwhelmed Scott and his team, who were forced to resume their journey back home, feeling that each step brought them closer to a tragic fate. As the expedition ventured once again into the vast white desert, conditions deteriorated drastically. The lack of food and exhaustion began to take a toll on the men. Scott, tormented by the guilt of having led his team on this mission, struggled to maintain morale as cold and despair took hold of them. Each day turned into a battle against time and the forces of nature, and the decisions that once seemed reasonable began to reveal themselves as fateful. On the 21st of March in 1912, after a series of futile efforts to advance, Scott, Wilson and Bowers found themselves trapped in a deadly storm. Unable to move forward and with their provisions nearly exhausted, they realized the gravity of their situation. That moment marked a turning point, not only in their expedition but in the history of Antarctic exploration. The struggle for survival turned into an odyssey of hopelessness. The cold clung to their bones, and the shadow of death became a constant companion. Meanwhile, the men who had remained at the base camp, led by Lieutenant Henry "Teddy" Evans, anxiously awaited Scott's return. With each passing day, hope faded and anguish spread among the crew that had stayed behind. The news of the tragedy would not be long in coming, revealing the profound loss of lives and dreams. Finally, in November of 1912, the remains of Scott's expedition were found by a search party, which discovered their camp, which had become their final refuge. Inside the tent, the silence was overwhelming. Scott's diaries revealed his anguish, his reflections on ambition and sacrifice, and the final words of a man who had faced the unimaginable. The pages were imbued with a deep sense of loss and a longing for life, a resonance of the decisions that had led them to that tragic fate. Scott's tragedy left a complex legacy. Despite his failure, his bravery and determination impacted the hearts of those who followed in his footsteps. The story of his expedition became a symbol of human struggle against adversity, a reminder that the desire for exploration can often lead to devastating consequences. But was it truly a failure? Or perhaps Scott's story is a reflection of humanity's eternal quest for knowledge, even when the cost is life itself. As the enigma of his journey unfolds, the question persists: what lessons can be learned from his tragedy? As the questions linger in the icy air of Antarctica, Scott's legacy intertwines with the next great adventure on the continent. In the horizon, a new figure emerged. A man whose name would become synonymous with survival and determination in the ice. The story of Ernest Shackleton was about to begin, and with it, Antarctic exploration would take an unexpected and epic turn. This crisis would soon intensify, as the year 1914 would bring one of the most fascinating and tragic episodes in the history of Antarctic exploration, the Endurance expedition led by the intrepid Ernest Shackleton. In a global context marked by political tensions and the imminent outbreak of the First World War, the search for new horizons in the far south became an urgent necessity for some, while for others, it turned into a desperate adventure. The political atmosphere of the time was steeped in imperial rivalries. The great European powers fiercely competed for the domination of unexplored territories, and Antarctica was no exception. Shackleton, motivated by the desire to be remembered as a hero of his time, planned a journey that would not only seek new trade routes but also aspired to leave a lasting legacy in the history of exploration. The decision to launch his mission from the port of Buenos Aires on the 8th of August in 1914, just before the war broke out, was both a strategic and symbolic choice, an act of defiance against the looming shadow of conflict. The characters surrounding Shackleton were as diverse as they were fascinating. From Shackleton himself, with his indomitable spirit and thirst for adventure, to his crew, composed of men from various nationalities and professions, each brought their own talent and experience. Among them was Frank Worsley, the captain of the Endurance, a skilled sailor with a sharp instinct for navigation, and James Caird, a notable geologist and explorer who would become a key figure during the journey. Shackleton's decision to form a cohesive team, where each had a specific role, would be crucial for survival in the dark times ahead. The unfolding of events occurred with the same majesty as the polar landscapes. The Endurance, a ship designed to challenge the frigid waters of the Southern Ocean, set sail for Antarctica with the hope of reaching the South Pole. However, nature, in its uncontrollable power, had other plans. In January of 1915, the Endurance became trapped in the ice of the Weddell Sea, turning the expedition into a struggle for survival. For months, the men were forced to adapt to a life of extreme deprivation, living in an environment where temperatures could drop below 30 degrees Celsius below zero. As time passed, the situation became increasingly desperate. The crew, in an attempt to survive, was forced to abandon the Endurance in April of 1916 after the ship was crushed by the ice. However, despite losing their vessel, the true spirit of the expedition had managed to stay alive. Shackleton, aware of the danger and desolation, made the decision to lead his crew on a journey to the nearest island, Elephant Island, in search of help. The trek on foot through a frozen and hostile landscape became a true testament to human resilience. The immediate consequences of this odyssey were both physical and psychological. Upon reaching Elephant Island, Shackleton and his crew found themselves in an inhospitable place where hope seemed to fade with each wave crashing against the rocks. However, the spirit of camaraderie and Shackleton's determination to save his men never wavered. He managed to organize a risky journey in a small lifeboat, the James Caird, setting off for South Georgia. After more than 2 weeks facing stormy seas and extreme conditions, Shackleton and 2 of his men finally reached the island, where they were able to secure help to rescue the rest of the crew. The Endurance expedition left a legacy of resilience and bravery that has become an enigma through time. How was it possible for a group of men confronted with such overwhelming adversity to survive in the most extreme conditions? The story of Shackleton and his crew is a reflection of the human struggle against nature, a narrative where hope intertwines with despair and where every decision made becomes a thread that weaves the complex fabric of survival. Thus, the enigma of Shackleton endures, inviting contemplation on the limits of the human spirit and the mysteries that still inhabit the icy continent. On the horizon, a new era of exploration was beginning to take shape. Science in the Ice, a chapter that would reveal the hidden secrets in the Antarctic vastness, loomed as the next step in this intriguing journey into the unknown. What discoveries await in the frozen expanse where the past and the future intertwine in a single whisper? That crisis would soon transform into a unique opportunity for scientific development. In the early decades of the 20th century, the resonance of heroic expeditions vibrated in the icy air of Antarctica. But a new sense of purpose began to germinate. Exploration was no longer limited to the conquest of new territories. The vast and enigmatic expanse of the White Continent was starting to be seen as a natural laboratory, a stage for research that could unveil secrets of our own planet. Historical context. At the beginning of the 20th century, the world was facing a radical change. The Industrial Revolution had altered the perception of the natural world and, with it, the pursuit of knowledge. While European powers competed for territorial control, science began to assume a prominent role. The scientific community, eager to understand the mysteries of climate, geology, and biology, turned its gaze toward Antarctica, a continent that had until then largely remained an enigma. In this environment, various initiatives emerged that sought to transform the frozen desolation into a space of discovery and advancement. Key figures and decisions. Among the pioneers of this new scientific era was the Norwegian Fridtjof Nansen, an explorer who, beyond his previous feats, understood the importance of systematic research. In 1893, Nansen embarked on his famous expedition aboard the Fram with the aim of studying ocean currents and polar climate. His innovative approach marked a turning point in the history of Antarctic expeditions, laying the groundwork for future studies. However, he was not the only one. The British Ernest Shackleton, who had already made his mark in previous explorations, also became interested in science. With his expedition of 1914, Shackleton sought not only the glory of discovery, but also intended to conduct scientific studies on the climate and fauna of Antarctica. Development of events. The first major organised scientific expedition was the Antarctic expedition of the Royal Geographical Society of Britain, which took place between 1900 and 1904 under the command of Captain Robert Falcon Scott. This mission aimed not only to reach the South Pole, but also to collect data on the geology, biology, and meteorology of the region. Scott and his team faced extreme temperatures and adverse conditions, but they managed to establish a series of research stations that would provide valuable information about the continent. Over the years, other nations joined this new scientific race. In 1910, Amundsen's expedition, although famous for its conquest of the pole, also carried out meteorological and geological observations that would enrich the scientific heritage of the time. The data collected during these expeditions began to form a puzzle that, although incomplete, offered glimpses into the secrets that the ice guarded so jealously. As the century progressed, science in Antarctica solidified. In 1912, the British explorer Douglas Mawson conducted his own expedition, focusing on the collection of geological and biological samples and on the observation of native fauna such as penguins and seals. Mawson not only survived unimaginable hardships, but his findings would provide an invaluable legacy to biology and geology. Immediate consequences: the impact of these scientific expeditions was profound. The data collected not only expanded knowledge about Antarctica, but also opened new frontiers in various scientific disciplines. The study of ocean currents, climate, geology, and Antarctic biology began to influence how scientists around the world understood the environment. However, this new approach also brought with it a dilemma. Would it be possible to balance scientific exploration with the preservation of this fragile ecosystem? The enigma of the chapter. Despite the advances, the mystery of Antarctica remained. What secrets lay hidden beneath the eternal ice? And how would increasing human intervention affect this frozen paradise? These unsettling questions began to arise in the minds of scientists and explorers, foreshadowing a future in which research and conservation would have to coexist in a delicate balance. As the 20th century progressed, science on the ice laid the foundations for a new chapter in the history of Antarctica. The research conducted not only unveiled secrets of the past, but also began to raise questions about the future. With the advent of aviation and the possibility of exploring the most remote corners of the continent, Antarctica was preparing to enter an era of even more extraordinary discoveries. Thus, as the influence of the early scientific expeditions reverberated in the ice, a new horizon emerged in the Antarctic sky. The age of aviation was about to take off, and with it, the possibilities of unveiling the deepest enigmas of the white continent. What mysteries still awaited in the vast ice expanses, now accessible through the skies? This crisis would soon give way to a new era of discoveries, one that would forever change the way humans interacted with the vast and cold Antarctic continent. Aviation, a dream that had come to life in the early 20th century, would begin to blur the boundaries of ice with the sound of its engines, revealing a new horizon in the exploration of Antarctica. As world powers sought to expand their influence and knowledge, the ability to fly would become an essential tool for unraveling the mysteries of the most inhospitable region on the planet. In the years following the First World War, the world experienced an unprecedented social and technological transformation. The repercussions of the war left many nations in a state of uncertainty, but they also drove significant advancements in aviation. With the arrival of the decade of the 1920s, the dream of flight became a tangible reality. During this period, the political and social climate in Europe and North America was infused with a desire for adventure and exploration, leading to a renewed interest in Antarctica. As European powers competed to colonize and explore distant lands, aviation emerged as a symbol of progress and ambition. At the forefront of this new era was Richard E. Byrd, an American aviator who, unknowingly, would become one of the most iconic figures in Antarctic exploration. Byrd, a man of extraordinary vision, had dreamed of flying over the South Pole since his youth. In 1928, he embarked on an expedition that would change the course of Antarctic history. With a team of men and a two-engine Fokker airplane, Byrd headed to the Antarctic coast, where he prepared a base for his operations. The expedition aimed not only to explore the frozen continent, but also to establish an American presence in a place that had been, until then, the domain of European powers. The transantarctic flights of the 20s and 30s represented a bold leap in exploration. Byrd and his team made the first flight over the South Pole on the 29th of November in 1929, an event that resonated worldwide. Images of the vast and white desolation of the continent, captured from the heights, offered an unprecedented perspective of Antarctica. But what secrets lay hidden beneath that layer of ice? Byrd, like many of his contemporaries, was convinced that aerial exploration would reveal more than geography. It would seek to understand the climate, biology, and geology of the region. However, it was not all smooth sailing. Aviation in Antarctica brought with it a unique set of challenges: extreme weather conditions, icy winds, and unexpected storms tested both men and machines. Despite their achievements, Byrd's expedition was not without difficulties. In 1930, his second expedition, which promised to be even more ambitious, faced logistical and mechanical problems that threatened to end his mission. But his determination and unwavering faith in his team led him to undertake a longer flight, reaching the most inhospitable regions of Antarctica. The impact of these trans-Antarctic flights was significant. Aviation not only facilitated exploration but also allowed scientists to collect data that had previously been inconceivable. The flights offered a new way to map the terrain, as well as an opportunity to study phenomena such as glaciology and meteorology in real time. However, the question persists: was this an advance toward discovery, or merely a way to highlight the fragility of humanity in the face of the vastness of nature? The events of the decade of 1930 also led to a deeper reflection on the role of powers in the continent. Aerial exploration had begun to demonstrate that Antarctica was not just a place of ice and desolation, but a territory that could be claimed and exploited. Thus, aviation became a symbol of human ambition, but also a catalyst for latent conflicts between nations. As flights increased, so did tensions over sovereignty and ownership of Antarctic lands. The influence of Byrd's decisions and those of other explorers was reflected in the legacy they would leave in the region. In 1933, Byrd made his third journey, this time to establish a permanent base, laying the groundwork for future expeditions and the eventual arrival of scientists from various nations. But with each advance, a mystery also arose. How could nations balance exploration and respect for a territory that had remained largely unexplored for millennia? Aviation had opened the doors to Antarctica, but it had also raised unsettling questions about the future of the continent. As the story of aerial exploration unfolded, it became evident that the limits of exploration were not only determined by technology, but also by ethics and diplomacy. Could the nations of the world work together to preserve Antarctica? Or would they fall into the trap of competition and conflict? The enigma of the chapter presents itself inevitably. As aviation transformed Antarctic exploration, who would take responsibility for protecting this fragile ecosystem from human ambitions? The legacy of Byrd and his contemporaries is measured not only in terms of geographical discoveries, but also in the lessons about the relationship between humanity and nature. As this chapter closes, a transition toward a period of greater complexity looms. The Second World War was approaching, a conflict that would not only alter global geopolitics, but also change the way nations interacted with Antarctica. The influence of aviation, once a bearer of hope and discovery, would be overshadowed by a deeper and darker struggle. The question that lingers in the air is whether exploration and science can prevail over the shadows of the impending war, or if, instead, they will become tools of power and control. What secrets still awaited in the depths of the ice, and who would have the courage to unearth them? This crisis would soon be overshadowed by a conflict of titanic proportions. The Second World War, a cataclysm that consumed nations and overflowed borders, not only altered the world order, but also swept away the scientific and exploratory ambitions that had begun to flourish in Antarctica. Expeditions, once emblematic of human curiosity and the desire to explore the unknown, were cast into the shadow of a global conflict that shifted international priorities. As the roar of cannons echoed across Europe and Asia, the frozen continent became a symbol of the peace that once was and now seemed a distant dream. The decade of 1930 had witnessed a resurgence in Antarctic exploration. Countries such as Argentina, Great Britain and Norway had intensified their efforts in the region, establishing bases and conducting scientific research. However, the outbreak of war in 1939 brought an abrupt halt to these activities. Nations now focused on defense and survival diverted resources and attention away from Antarctica, plunging it into a haunting silence. In this context, figures such as Franklin D. Roosevelt in the United States and Winston Churchill in the United Kingdom faced critical decisions. Roosevelt, aware of the geopolitical importance of Antarctica, had begun to consider it in his military strategies. However, time and resources were limited, and immediate priorities centered on the war conflict. This war was not only a military confrontation, but also an ideological struggle that defined the fate of entire nations. The question was how a frozen continent could compete with the clamor of the fight for freedom and survival. As the war intensified, exploration plans faded away. Expeditions that had been carefully planned were cancelled or postponed indefinitely. The scientific community, which had begun to map Antarctica and understand its unique ecosystem, found itself in a state of paralysis. The legacy of previous expeditions, forged with courage and determination, was now relegated to the background. With the passage of the war years, Antarctica became an even deeper enigma. Rumors of military interest in the continent began to circulate. There was talk of the possibility that the warring powers would send explorers to map the terrain, seeking hidden resources or strategic positions. The question resonating among scientists and explorers was clear: what secrets still awaited in the depths of the ice? As the war reached its climax, fascination with Antarctica did not fade but transformed. In 1943, American military interest in the region intensified. Reconnaissance flights began, although these were more covert operations than scientific explorations. Aircraft soared through the cold skies, capturing images of a landscape that seemed immutable but was filled with mysteries yet to be discovered. However, each image taken from the air only fueled the curiosity and longing of the explorers on solid ground, whose voices were drowned out by the roar of war. The end of the conflict in 1945 brought about a paradigm shift. The Allied powers, now victorious, began to reconsider their positions in the world. Antarctica, which had been forgotten for years, resurfaced as an ideological battleground for international influence. The lessons learned during the war led to a new understanding of cooperation and mutual understanding. Could then Antarctica become a symbol of peace in a world that had known the horror of conflict? The decisions made during these years of war would influence the future direction of Antarctic expeditions. The shadow of conflict had left a complex and enigmatic legacy that would affect international relations on the frozen continent. The enigma of the chapter centered on the question: how could Antarctica, a place of desolation and silence, become a beacon of hope and collaboration in times of global tension? The immediate consequences of the war were profound. As nations began to rebuild and redefine their priorities, Antarctica became a focal point of attention. Operation Highjump of 1946, which would be the first major military expedition to the region, laid the groundwork for future scientific interest in the continent. This unexpected turn would transform the narrative of Antarctic exploration, marking the beginning of an era of international cooperation in a place that had remained unexplored for so long. Thus, in a world marked by conflict, Antarctica emerged as a renewed enigma, a place where the past and the future intertwined in a delicate balance. Exploration, which had once been an act of individual defiance, would become a collective effort, uniting nations in the pursuit of knowledge and understanding. But could this new era of collaboration truly overcome the shadows of the past? The answer awaited on the horizon in the form of the next great Antarctic adventure. If you're enjoying the video, give it a like and subscribe to see more content from the channel. That crisis would soon transform into an unbridled ambition. In the context of the post-war period, as the world began to recover from the ravages of the Second World War, attention turned to the unknown. Antarctica. In this vast frozen desert where the sun barely peeks out, Operation Highjump emerged, one of the most ambitious and controversial expeditions in history. As the echoes of battles resonated on the horizon, the United States prepared to establish its presence on this remote continent, a step that would leave an indelible mark on the geopolitics of the 20th century. The period leading up to Operation Highjump was marked by a climate of tension and competition. The war had revealed not only the destructive capacity of men but also their eagerness to expand boundaries. With Europe devastated and Asia in ruins, interest in Antarctica grew, driven by the need for resources and scientific exploration. The polarity between powers, especially between the United States and the Soviet Union, raised fears that the White Continent would become a new battleground, not of weapons but of ideologies and territorial control. The architect of Operation Highjump was Admiral Richard E. Byrd, a pioneer of Antarctic exploration and a national hero. Byrd, who had already conducted successful expeditions in the region, had established an almost mystical connection with the ice and solitude of the continent. His vision was clear. It was not just about claiming territory, but about demonstrating the ability of the United States to operate in extreme conditions, both militarily and scientifically. In 1946, Byrd presented his plan to the Department of Defense, which saw in the operation the opportunity to consolidate its presence in a strategically important area. Thus, on the 26th of August in 1946, one of the grandest expeditions ever undertaken was launched. With a fleet composed of more than 4,700 men, 13 ships and 33 aircraft, Operation Highjump set sail southward. The scale of this deployment was unprecedented in the history of polar exploration. It aimed not only to explore and map the vast expanse of Antarctica, but also to establish a permanent base that would serve as a starting point for future research. The mission was divided into 3 phases. The first, an aerial reconnaissance; the second, the establishment of a base on the coast; and the third, a thorough scientific investigation. But what secrets awaited in this frozen desolation? As the ships approached the Antarctic coast, the cold became almost palpable. The men on board, many of them trained soldiers, were about to face an environment where nature dictated the rules. In this setting, contact with reality became a challenge. The first planes began to soar through the skies, mapping a landscape that had remained largely unexplored. What was found were not only glaciers and ice, but also an ecosystem unknown to many. A world where silence was as overwhelming as the darkness. Days passed, and the progress of the expedition was hindered by severe weather conditions. Snowstorms and icy winds began to affect the morale of the men. However, Byrd and his team remained steadfast, driven by the determination to fulfill their mission. By the end of January in 1947, they succeeded in establishing the base called Little America 4, which would become the heart of the operation. From there, scientific investigations were carried out in various areas: geology, meteorology, and biology, revealing secrets about the climate and land that could have repercussions worldwide. However, not everything was science. As the expedition progressed, rumors began to emerge about strange encounters. Some crew members reported seeing inexplicable lights in the Antarctic sky. Stories of sightings of unidentified flying objects began to circulate, creating an aura of mystery around the mission. The debate over whether Antarctica held secrets beyond human understanding intensified. The mix of wonder and fear took hold of the men, who often wondered if they were being watched by something beyond their comprehension. After several months of intense activity, Operation Highjump came to an end. In March of 1947, the ships began their return, carrying with them not only scientific data but also a legacy of secrets that still persist. The investigations conducted during those months laid the groundwork for future explorations, but also left unanswered questions. Why had a mission of such magnitude been carried out in a time of relative peace? What other hidden interests might have been at play? The immediate impact of Operation Highjump was notable. The United States established itself as a power on the Antarctic scene, and its base became a reference point for other nations wishing to explore the continent. However, the influence of the decisions made during those months resonates even beyond Tensions between powers were beginning to brew, and the renewed interest in Antarctica attracted the attention of other nations, eventually leading to the signing of the Antarctic Treaty in 1959. But the question persists: what mysteries lie beneath the layers of ice? What secrets of Operation Highjump remain hidden? As the world enters a new millennium, Antarctica remains an enigma, a continent where the shadows of the past intertwine with the hopes of the future. The exploration of Antarctica did not end with Operation Highjump. In fact, it marked the beginning of a new chapter in the history of Antarctic research. In the following chapter, we will delve into the signing of the Antarctic Treaty, an agreement that not only defined the governance of the continent, but also established a framework for international cooperation in a world that, despite its tensions, was beginning to recognize the importance of the White Continent. What commitments were nations willing to undertake to protect this frozen treasure? This crisis would soon transform into a decisive moment for the fate of the Antarctic continent. In 1959, amid a world divided by the Cold War, a group of nations gathered in Washington, D.C. to sign an agreement that would forever change the perception and management of Antarctica. In this chapter, we will explore the Antarctic Treaty, a document that marked the beginning of an era of international cooperation in a territory that, until that moment, had been the subject of ambitions and rivalries. Historical context. The years leading up to 1959 were marked by growing geopolitical tension. The Second World War had left a void in the dynamics of global power, and the world's powers were reorganizing into opposing ideological blocs. Meanwhile, the Antarctic continent, until then a vast and almost unexplored ice desert, had begun to attract the attention of scientists and governments. Scientific expeditions conducted in the decade of 1940 and the early 1950s had revealed not only the richness of its biodiversity, but also the strategic importance of the continent in the context of the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union in particular were interested in the potential of Antarctica. Its remote location offered unique opportunities for scientific research and at the same time territorial control in a divided world. However, the spirit of the time also brought with it a desire for collaboration. Nations began to understand that instead of competing for sovereignty, they could join efforts in the exploration and preservation of this frozen territory. Key figures and decisions. The path to the Antarctic Treaty was influenced by key figures who, through their decisions and visions, laid the groundwork for international cooperation. One of the main architects of this agreement was the Secretary of State of the United States, John Foster Dulles, who saw the opportunity to establish a governance model that could serve as an antidote to the tensions of the Cold War. Dulles advocated for an approach that prioritized scientific research and peace, setting aside territorial disputes. On the other hand, the legacy of the Norwegian scientist and explorer Fridtjof Nansen, known for his contributions to polar exploration, also played a symbolic role in creating a consensus among nations. His example inspired many to see Antarctica as a place of discovery and collaboration rather than a battleground for territorial control. The idea that science could unite nations resonated deeply in this context, fostering the negotiation of a treaty that, in essence, would be a pact for peace. Development of events negotiations for the Antarctic Treaty began in October of 1958 when 12 nations, including the United States, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, France, and others gathered in Washington. For 2 months, diplomats discussed the terms of an agreement that would guarantee the peaceful use of the continent and promote cooperation in scientific research. On the 1st of December in 1959, the Antarctic Treaty was finally signed. Its articles established that Antarctica would be used exclusively for peaceful and scientific purposes, prohibiting any military activity, including nuclear testing. Furthermore, the treaty guaranteed that scientific research conducted on the continent would be freely shared among the signatory nations, promoting a spirit of collaboration. The signing of the treaty was a historic milestone. In a world where distrust dominated international relations, the fact that rival nations could come together to protect a common space was a ray of hope. However, despite this achievement, the shadows of discord still lurked in the corners of the treaty. Questions arose about what would happen if a nation decided to ignore its clauses and whether Antarctica could become a new stage for confrontation. Immediate consequences. The repercussions of the Antarctic Treaty were immediate. Shortly after its signing, research stations were established on the continent, and scientific expeditions began to flourish. Participating nations began to see Antarctica not only as a remote place but as a natural laboratory where they could investigate issues affecting all of humanity, from climate to marine biology. However, the treaty was not without criticism. Some questioned the effectiveness of its clauses, especially in a context where international tensions continued. Others argued that the treaty did not adequately address existing territorial claims, leaving a legal void that could be exploited in the future. The question many were asking was, could the promise of peace and cooperation in Antarctica withstand the pressure of political and economic interests in the rest of the world? The enigma of the chapter. Thus, the Antarctic Treaty stood as a symbol of the hope for a united world, a testament that even in times of conflict, humanity can find common ground. Nevertheless, the influence of political tensions remained present. As a new order was established in Antarctica, the question persisted: could the international community truly maintain peace on a continent where the interests of nations often clashed? What secrets and challenges awaited in the depths of the ice? As we delve into the next chapter, we will explore how this new era of scientific cooperation flourished in Antarctica, giving rise to a scientific race that would not only redefine research on the continent, but also reveal surprising truths about the future of our planet. This international cooperation would soon transform into a frantic quest for scientific knowledge on the frozen continent. With the signing of the Antarctic Treaty in 1959, a new era began that promised to unravel the mysteries of a world still largely unknown. Nations united by a common purpose embarked on the conquest of a territory where ice and darkness held ancestral secrets. Antarctica, once seen as a desolate void, now emerged as a natural laboratory. A perfect stage for scientific research and discovery. Historical context. The context that gave rise to this scientific race is as fascinating as it is complex. The Cold War had plunged the world into a spiral of political tensions and ideological rivalries. However, amidst this turmoil, a unique opportunity arose. Antarctica presented itself as neutral ground, a space where nations could collaborate without the shadow of war, with the possibility of sharing information and resources. Countries found themselves in an unusual consensus, prioritizing science over military competition. This environment facilitated the establishment of multiple research bases, each with its own purpose and agenda. During this period, the United States and the Soviet Union, two of the main actors on the global stage, began to invest significant resources in Antarctic exploration. While each nation sought to demonstrate its technological and scientific superiority, scientists became the true protagonists of this narrative. Under the cold gaze of the White Continent, unexpected alliances were forged, and the spirit of cooperation began to flourish despite the tensions that prevailed elsewhere. Key figures and decisions. Among the key players in this story are figures such as the American explorer Richard Byrd and the Soviet scientist Mikhail Lavrov. Byrd, with his experience in previous expeditions, was one of the first to establish a significant presence in Antarctica after the Second World War. Leading Operation Deep Freeze, he spearheaded the first large-scale scientific expeditions, laying the groundwork for the research that would take place in the following decades. On the other hand, Lavrov, a pioneer in Antarctic research, represented the Soviet ambition to expand its scientific frontiers and demonstrate its capabilities in the field of exploration. His work was fundamental in establishing the first Soviet research station, Vostok, in 1957, coinciding with the launch of the Sputnik satellite. This base would become a hub for climate and geological studies, as well as a symbol of Soviet advancement in the space race. Both leaders were driven by a shared desire to discover, but also by the need to position their nations as scientific powers in a divided world. The decision to establish bases in Antarctica was not merely an act of exploration. It was a declaration of intent, a strong message about the importance of science during a period of great uncertainty. Development of events. As the decade of 1960 progressed, scientific activity in Antarctica intensified. The United States, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, Norway, Germany, and other countries began to establish research stations, each with a particular focus ranging from meteorology to marine biology. These bases, many of which operated year-round, became centers of knowledge where scientists from various nationalities shared their findings and collaborated on joint projects. The surge of research in Antarctica was not limited to the study of climate and geology. During this period, scientists began to understand the importance of the continent in the global context. Antarctica, with its vast ice sheet, acts as a thermometer for the Earth's climate, and the research conducted in this remote place began to shed light on global warming and its potential consequences. Studies on glacier melting and life in the surrounding waters became a priority, revealing a unique ecosystem that, despite its apparent desolation, harbored rich biodiversity. In 1973, the Scientific Committee on Antarctic Research was established, promoting cooperation and data sharing among participating nations. This organization became a fundamental pillar of Antarctic research, facilitating a collaborative approach that allowed scientists to address broader and more complex questions about the continent and its impact on the rest of the world. Immediate consequences. The direct impact of this scientific race was profound and multifaceted. First, Antarctica solidified its status as a symbol of international collaboration, demonstrating that even in times of tension, science could unite nations. The findings made on the continent not only contributed to scientific knowledge but also propelled environmental policies and decisions regarding climate change that would resonate across the globe. Moreover, the emergence of permanent research stations meant that hundreds of scientists and technicians from around the world spent months on the continent, forming an international community that shared a passion for discovery and understanding. However, this increased human presence also raised new questions about sustainability and the conservation of the Antarctic environment, a mystery that still persists. The enigma of the chapter. Despite the advances made and the knowledge acquired, an enigma lingers in the shadows of Antarctica: how to balance scientific research with the need to preserve this fragile ecosystem. The growth of human activity on the continent has raised concerns about environmental impact and the possibility that science itself may threaten what it seeks to protect. The question that remains in the air is, can nations find a path that honors the legacy of scientific cooperation while safeguarding the very essence of Antarctica? Thus, as the bases multiplied and scientists delved into the secrets of the White Continent, the influence of their research resonated beyond the glaciers. The shadow of a new challenge approached, one that would be intimately linked to the understanding of global climate and the future of our planet. In the next chapter, we will address the challenge of climate and how Antarctic research has influenced the perception of climate change worldwide. What revelations might emerge from the frozen depths of Antarctica, and what enigmas still await in its vastness. That was the shadow of a world in transformation, a shadow that was cast over the frozen continent and began to unveil secrets that had remained hidden for millennia. The era of scientific exploration, which had emerged from the ashes of the Second World War, was entering a new phase, the study of the Antarctic climate. This chapter, The Climate Challenge, leads us to understand how climate research in Antarctica has influenced our global perception of climate change, a phenomenon that, like an unavoidable storm, looms over humanity. As the 20th century progressed, the world found itself immersed in a paradigmatic change. The Cold War had established a climate of competition not only militarily but also scientifically. Nations, eager to demonstrate their superiority, began to establish scientific bases in Antarctica, turning the continent into a laboratory for climate research. The political context was complex. While governments sought information that could strategically benefit them, scientists ventured into a territory where each layer of ice told a story, where glaciers were archives of time, storing in their structures the echoes of past climates. Among the key figures of this era was the American climatologist J.P. Stearns, whose studies on Antarctic ice began to shed light on global climate patterns. Stearns, along with other scientists from various nationalities, ventured into the frozen vastness with a clear objective: to decipher the enigma of the Earth's climate. But they were not alone. On the horizon, other actors such as the Soviet Union and the United Kingdom were also seeking their place in this scientific crusade, each with their own interests and strategies. The unfolding of events in this era was characterized by a series of expeditions and discoveries that would forever change the way we understand climate. In 1957, the first International Geophysical Year expedition was launched to Antarctica, marking a milestone in global scientific cooperation. With the participation of more than 60 countries, researchers began to collect samples of ice, air, and soil, seeking to understand how past climatic conditions could predict the future. The question was how those layers of ice, which had remained unaltered for eons, could offer answers to pressing questions about global warming. As scientists extracted ice cores from glaciers, the contents of those cores revealed a dramatic narrative of climate changes, glaciation cycles, and warming periods. Each air bubble trapped in the ice became a witness to the past, a reflection of the atmosphere that once existed on Earth. The data obtained from these cores showed that concentrations of greenhouse gases, such as carbon dioxide and methane, had fluctuated in correlation with temperature changes over millennia. However, what truly alarmed scientists was the unusual speed of changes in modern climate, a speed that seemed out of place in the context of natural cycles. The immediate consequences of these discoveries were profound. Reports and studies began to alert the world to the imminent threat of climate change. Governments, which had minimized scientists' warnings for years, were forced to reconsider their environmental policies. Antarctica, until then a remote and poorly understood territory, became a symbol of the fight against climate change. However, this new awareness also brought with it a dilemma. Could humanity unite to face this global challenge, or would political and economic differences continue to hinder the necessary cooperation? The enigma that persists is how humanity, having received such clear warnings from the frozen heart of the Earth, still struggles to unify efforts in the fight against climate change. Why, despite knowledge and evidence, do concrete actions seem so elusive? Antarctica, with its stunning beauty and harsh reality, presents itself as a mirror in which humanity must look at itself. As scientists continue their research, the frozen continent continues to reveal its secrets, but the question remains in the air. What more will its glaciers tell us before it is too late? This concern becomes even more palpable when we consider that, at the heart of this climate research, there also lies a story of ambition and competition, a story that unfolds against the backdrop of the Cold War and leads us to the next chapter of our exploration: the Soviet presence. There, the narrative will delve into how the Soviet Union, amid this scientific rivalry, left its mark on Antarctica and contributed to the global understanding of climate and its transformations. This crisis would soon give way to a new scenario on the frozen continent, one marked by the shadow of the Cold War and the ambition for power. In this context, the Soviet Union emerged as a decisive player in the exploration of Antarctica, not only due to its desire to expand its territorial influence, but also because of its eagerness to demonstrate scientific superiority to the world. The Soviet presence in this vast white desert became an enigma. a series of decisions and strategic moves that still resonate through time. By the middle of the 20th century, the world was divided into two ideological blocs. The rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union manifested not only in the military and political realms but also extended to science and exploration. Antarctica, a continent whose vastness and mystery made it fertile ground for research, turned into a silent battleground. In this context, the decade of 1950 marked the beginning of frantic Soviet activity on the continent. It was a time when scientific exploration intertwined with political propaganda, where each advancement was a victory in the war of ideologies. Soviet leaders, aware of the strategic importance of Antarctica, made decisions that would change the course of their history on the continent. In 1955, the Soviet Union announced its intention to participate in the Antarctic Conference, which would culminate in the signing of the Antarctic Treaty in 1959. This treaty not only established peace in the region, but also recognized the importance of international cooperation in scientific research. However, beneath this facade of cooperation, the Soviet Union had deeper objectives. Scientific exploration became a propaganda tool, a mirror reflecting its power and its capacity to challenge the West. The first milestone of this presence was the creation of the first Soviet base in Antarctica. The Vostok Station, inaugurated in 1957. The site, located in the heart of Antarctica, became a symbol of Soviet ambition. Since its inauguration, Vostok was not only a research center but also a stronghold of communist ideology, where Soviet scientists conducted studies on the climate, geology, and biology of the continent. But what was the true purpose behind this research? Was science really the driving force behind the Soviet presence? Or was there a darker background? As the years progressed, the scientific activity of the Soviet Union in Antarctica intensified. In 1958, the Soviet Union launched the first artificial satellite, Sputnik, and in that same year, its presence on the continent was solidified with the opening of new research stations. The Mirny station, established on the east coast, became an example of Soviet ingenuity and a nerve center for research. However, the competition with the United States, which had established its own base in Antarctica, was palpable. Each discovery became a new chapter in the history of rivalry, where scientific achievements were often overshadowed by the need to demonstrate ideological superiority. Soviet scientists, in their quest for knowledge, also faced a hostile and relentless environment. The extreme conditions of Antarctica not only tested physical endurance, but also challenged the technological capabilities of the time. Research on the continent focused not only on climate and geology, but also extended to studies on marine life and ice dynamics. However, in this eagerness to explore and discover, unsettling questions arise. To what extent was the Soviet regime willing to risk the lives of its scientists in the name of science? Did the pursuit of knowledge justify exposure to such a hostile environment? By the end of the 1970s, the Soviet presence in Antarctica had reached its peak. With a total of 6 operational research stations, the Soviet Union had established itself as a leader in Antarctic exploration. Research diversified, covering everything from studies on climate change to investigations on the effects of radiation on marine life. However, as tensions between the blocs increased, so did uncertainty about the future of international cooperation in the region. The shadow of the Cold War loomed over the continent, raising the question, could science truly prevail over politics in a place so laden with symbolism? The immediate consequences of Soviet expansion in Antarctica were significant. International cooperation, which had been the pillar of the Antarctic Treaty, was threatened. Bloc politics infiltrated science, generating distrust and rivalry. The global scientific community began to wonder if research in Antarctica could lead to a direct confrontation between superpowers. Amid this tension, voices emerged advocating for the need to preserve Antarctica as a space of peace and collaboration. By the end of the 1980s, the global political situation began to change. The fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the Soviet regime led to a re-evaluation of the Soviet presence in Antarctica. What legacy had the Soviet Union left on the frozen continent? Had it truly achieved its objectives, or had it become trapped in a cycle of rivalry that limited its scientific potential? The mystery of the Soviet presence in Antarctica still endures, an echo of past decisions that continue to be the subject of study and reflection. With the shadow of the Cold War fading, Antarctica prepares for a new era of exploration and discovery. The question that lingers in the air is, what secrets still awaited in the depths of this vast continent, and how would they influence the daily lives of those who venture to unravel them? Life on the ice, which we will explore in the next chapter, will reveal the challenges and experiences of those who inhabit and work in this extreme environment. This crisis would soon give way to a new era of exploration and discovery in Antarctica. As nations competed to establish their presence on the frozen continent, the Antarctic stations became small microcosms of life, where the routine of researchers and staff intertwined with the mystery of the extreme environment surrounding them. Life on the ice, in its complexity and simplicity, revealed an enigma that went beyond science. How did humans adapt to a place where nature seemed to challenge existence itself? The story of daily life in the Antarctic stations begins in a context of growing scientific and political interest in the continent. Following the signing of the Antarctic Treaty in 1959, the foundations for international cooperation were laid, and starting from the 1960s, various nations began to establish research bases. However, this push towards science was accompanied by a notable challenge: the need to survive in an environment where temperatures could drop to extreme levels and polar darkness could last for months. Among the key figures in this saga are the leaders of scientific missions, many of whom were visionaries who decided to risk everything for knowledge. Figures such as Dr. John E. McCarthy from the United States, who led research on glaciology at McMurdo Station, or Dr. Georgy Ushakov, a prominent Soviet scientist who excelled in biological research and the study of Antarctic marine life. Their decisions, from personnel selection to determining research approaches, shaped daily life in these stations. Life in the Antarctic stations was not simply a tale of sacrifice, it was also a narrative of camaraderie and resilience. Researchers, generally a diverse group of scientists, engineers and support staff, faced adversity together. At Palmer Station, for example, the daily routine included everything from collecting data on the climate and local fauna to constructing infrastructure that could withstand the onslaught of ice and wind. The group dynamic was crucial. Isolation and the pressure of the extreme environment could turn days into weeks of tension, where small conflicts could escalate into deep disagreements. The events of daily life were marked by the search for balance between scientific work and emotional well-being. The arrival of the sun in spring, after months of darkness, was celebrated with simple yet significant rituals. Shared meals, game nights, and sporadic communications with the outside world became emotional anchors. However, amidst these routines, the shadow of loneliness and danger loomed constantly. What secrets did the frozen cold hide, and what mysteries awaited in the vast silence of Antarctica? As the stations became established, new realities began to emerge. The development of technology allowed researchers to communicate more effectively with the outside world, but it also brought a new set of challenges. The stations designed for research became laboratories of social life, where time was measured not only in days but in cycles of light and darkness. In the rhythmic dance of the seasons, the inhabitants faced a dilemma: how to maintain sanity in a place where time seemed to stand still, where the echo of their voices was lost in the immensity of the ice. The consequences of these experiences were profound. Life in Antarctica forged unbreakable bonds among researchers, but it also left scars. The pressure of isolation could at times result in mental health issues affecting several team members. The stories of those who succumbed to loneliness or anxiety became part of the legacy of Antarctic exploration. A reminder that science and personal sacrifice often went hand in hand. The question of human fragility in this environment remains relevant. Daily life in the Antarctic stations, therefore, presents itself as an enigma in itself. As scientists and staff dealt with the extreme cold and isolation, they also faced the deeper question: what does it mean to be human in a place where nature seems to challenge the essence of life? Reflections on existence and purpose intertwined with the pursuit of knowledge, creating a narrative rich in nuances and contradictions. However, the mystery of life on the ice does not end here. Antarctica, with its vast, unexplored expanse, still holds secrets waiting to be discovered. As we move towards the next chapter, we find ourselves at the threshold of a new era. Research on the frozen continent has begun to pave the way for space exploration. How have the lessons learned on the ice influenced our understanding of the cosmos and our preparation to explore beyond our planet? The answer to this unsettling question awaits us in the next chapter. That life in the ice not only accommodated science but also became a laboratory for the future of humanity. With each expedition that ventured into the frozen confines of Antarctica, a path was forged toward the unknown, a portal connecting our Earth with the mysteries of the universe. In this context, the Antarctic expedition stood not only as a tribute to the exploratory spirit, but also as the key to unveiling the secrets of space. As the Cold War marked the pulse of history, Antarctica transformed into neutral ground, a space where nations could collaborate instead of compete. This environment fostered a new type of exploration, one that transcended the boundaries of the planet and launched toward the stars. As scientists from various nationalities established research bases on the icy continent, their discoveries resonated in the fields of astrobiology, climatology, and physics, bringing humanity to a threshold of knowledge that seemed in many ways an analogue to what space exploration would be. In this context, the space program of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration began to find inspiration in Antarctic research. In the decade of the 1960s, the impact of polar exploration became evident. Research on the climate of Antarctica provided valuable clues about the atmosphere and conditions on other planets. The similarities between the frozen extremes of Antarctica and the icy deserts of Mars did not go unnoticed by scientists. The question that arose was whether the key to understanding life on other worlds could be hidden in the icy surface of the white continent. As research developed, the role of Antarctica as a testing ground for space missions became more evident. Scientists began to use the continent as a place to experiment with technologies that would be fundamental for the exploration of other planets. Life in an extreme environment where temperatures could drop below 60 degrees Celsius below zero became a perfect analogy for preparing astronauts for the rigors of space. It was considered one of the best ways to test human endurance in a place where survival is a constant struggle against the environment. One of the most significant milestones in this intersection of Antarctic science and space exploration was the research on Antarctic ice. In the year 2003, the Antarctic Ice Sheet project began drilling into deep ice, revealing layers that contained climate information spanning hundreds of thousands of years. The data obtained not only helped to understand the climate of Earth, but also offered clues about how water and ice behave on other frozen worlds, such as Europa, the moon of Jupiter. The possibility that secrets of our past were preserved in those layers waiting to be unearthed was a fascinating idea. However, the connection between research in Antarctica and space exploration was not limited to climate science. As technology advanced, scientists began to experiment with food production in extreme conditions. The creation of greenhouses in Antarctica provided a model for agriculture on Mars or the Moon, where resources would be limited and self-sufficiency would be essential. This pragmatic approach to facing the challenges of life on other planets raised an interesting question. Could Antarctica be a dress rehearsal for space colonization? The scientific discoveries made on the White Continent also led to the creation of simulations of space missions. In this hostile environment, as researchers battled against the cold and loneliness, experiments were conducted that simulated life on Mars, allowing astronauts to train in conditions that mimicked life in space. The Antarctic bases would become laboratories for life on another planet, where new equipment would be tested and studies on the mental and physical health of explorers on prolonged missions would be conducted. Antarctica was shaping up to be the place where the future of humanity among the stars was being written. Yet despite all these advances and the hope they brought, the enigma persisted. Space exploration, while increasingly within reach, remained a monumental challenge. As scientists from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration and other space agencies continued their work in Antarctica, a troubling question arose. Were we truly prepared to face the mysteries of the cosmos? Or were there aspects of our human nature that we still needed to unravel before venturing beyond our home? The answers to these questions were neither simple nor obvious. As progress was made among the ice and the depths of the universe were explored, a sense of uncertainty lingered in the air. The future of space exploration depended on our ability to adapt and learn from what the frozen continent had to teach us. Would Antarctica then be not only a laboratory on Earth, but also the gateway that would lead us to the stars? Thus, this chapter brings us to a threshold in the history of humanity. Antarctica, with its inhospitable beauty and its capacity to inspire, became a silent witness to our highest aspirations. But as we look to the future, we find ourselves at a crossroads. Will the lessons learned in this vast white desert grant us the wisdom necessary to cross the void of space, or will we remain trapped in the ice of our own planet? With the resonance of these questions in our hearts, we move toward the next chapter. In it, we will explore the challenges of the 21st century facing Antarctica, the struggle between human curiosity and the need for conservation. The story unfolding before us reveals not only the desire to explore, but also the responsibility that comes with protecting the legacy of the White Continent. What secrets will Antarctica still hold in its frozen memory? This tireless quest to understand the secrets of the frozen continent did not cease with the arrival of the 21st century. On the contrary, new challenges emerged, revealing an enigma even more complex than that faced by past expeditions. In an increasingly interconnected world affected by climate change, Antarctica became a stage where the dilemma between human progress and environmental conservation takes on vital importance. In the 2000 decade, the precarious balance between human presence and the wild nature of Antarctica began to show signs of tension. The rise of polar tourism, driven by advances in transportation technology and a growing curiosity for extreme destinations, attracted thousands of visitors to the icy shores of the continent. However, this influx was not without consequences. Ecosystems that had remained intact for millennia now faced unprecedented pressure. The footprints of tourists were etched like shadows on the ice, leaving questions about the legacy we were creating in this almost mythical place. The historical context of these challenges is situated within a global landscape where environmental awareness was on the rise. The 1990s marked the beginning of a shift in how nations thought about the environment. The Kyoto Protocol of 1997 had begun to lay the groundwork for a shared responsibility for the conservation of the planet. However, Antarctica, a continent with a fragile and unique ecosystem, found itself on the brink of a dilemma: the need to preserve its natural beauty in the face of the temptation of human development. The key players in this scenario were diverse. Governments from different nations, tourism companies, and environmental organizations found themselves in a delicate dance where each decision could have profound repercussions. Tour operators, in their eagerness to satisfy the demand for unique experiences, began to design routes that ventured further into the interior of the continent. This raised a fundamental question about oversight and responsibility in the management of the continent. Decisions made in boardrooms and international summits often seemed disconnected from the realities on the ground. As the 21st century progressed, events unfolded rapidly. In 2009, the International Association of Antarctica Tour Operators implemented a code of conduct aimed at mitigating the impact of tourism. However, regulations were not always sufficient. Images of penguins and seals, appealing in their natural habitat, began to blend with those of tourists overflowing protected areas. Authorities faced the challenge of balancing the promotion of Antarctica as a tourist destination with the urgent need to protect its ecosystem. The possibility that human curiosity threatened what it so admired was a growing concern. The immediate consequences of this increase in tourism began to become evident: waste left by visitors, noise pollution, and the risk of introducing invasive species became alarming concerns for scientists studying the impact of climate change in the region. The continent, which had been considered a bastion of purity, faced the possibility of becoming a stage of environmental degradation. The question resonates in the air: could Antarctica, a symbol of the planet's fragility, withstand the onslaught of human progress? However, the enigma of the chapter is not limited to tourism. In a context of global climate changes, scientific research in Antarctica also became crucial. Glaciers were retreating, and scientists began to observe phenomena that challenged their understanding. What secrets still awaited in the depths of the ice? Antarctica was transforming into a natural laboratory where answers to questions about global climate and biodiversity intertwined with the challenges of human intervention. The decisions made in this context not only affected Antarctica but also resonated across the planet. The need for international cooperation became more evident than ever. Could nations find common ground to preserve the continent while sharing the benefits of tourism and scientific research? The future of Antarctica, an enigma that seemed to expand like its vast glaciers, remained unresolved. Meanwhile, the influence of history continued to be present. The struggle for the conservation of Antarctica evoked the ancient expeditions, whose achievements and failures had laid the foundations of our current understanding. But had we truly learned from those who had come before us? The decisions of the present, shaped by human ambition and curiosity, could have repercussions that would extend beyond our generations. Thus, the chapter of the challenges of the 21st century closes, leaving a question that persists like an echo in the cold Antarctic wind. Are we willing to sacrifice the purity of one of the last wild places on the planet in the name of progress? At this turning point, Antarctica becomes a mirror of our choices, a warning about the delicate balance we must maintain between exploration and conservation. As we delve into the next chapter, we will discover how the international community has begun to recognize this challenge, using the continent as a global laboratory that offers us not only answers, but also valuable lessons for the future. What discoveries await us in this vast and icy laboratory? The story of Antarctica continues, and its narrative is far from concluding. This crisis would soon give way to a greater transformation, one that would reveal Antarctica not only as an inhospitable continent, but as a natural laboratory of immeasurable value for global science. As the 20th century progressed, the importance of Antarctica as a space dedicated to scientific research solidified, turning its vast and icy landscapes into the stage for discoveries that would resonate across the globe. The historical context surrounding this process was complex. After the Second World War, the world found itself in a state of tension and rivalry, but also in search of cooperation. The need for a neutral space where nations could work together became evident. In this sense, Antarctica emerged as a symbol of hope and collaboration among countries that had until then been in conflict. The Antarctic Treaty of 1959, which established the continent as an area dedicated to peace and science, marked a fundamental milestone. For the first time in history, nations agreed that research and exploration should take precedence over territorial rivalry. Among the key players in this change was then United States President Dwight D. Eisenhower, who promoted the idea that scientific cooperation could serve as a bridge to improve international relations. Alongside him, leaders from countries such as the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, and Argentina also saw in Antarctica an opportunity for diplomacy. Thus, on the 23rd of June in 1961, the Antarctic Treaty was ratified, allowing the continent to become a global laboratory and a symbol of peace. The unfolding of events during this period witnessed the arrival of numerous scientific expeditions which began to deploy research stations across the continent, from the McMurdo Station established by the United States to Soviet bases and others from nations such as Germany and Japan. Antarctica transformed into a hub of scientific activity. Researchers from various disciplines began to unravel the secrets of ancient ice, unique ecosystems, and the atmosphere surrounding this continent. Research in Antarctica has allowed scientists to study climate change in an unprecedented way. Ice cores extracted from the depths of the Vostok ice shelf in the center of the continent have provided invaluable information about Earth's climatic conditions over thousands of years. These records, spanning from the glacial era to the present, have offered a window into the past and have helped shape projections about the future of the global climate. However, the consequences of this surge in research have not been solely positive. As more nations settled and competed for resources and data, tensions arose over governance and environmental preservation. The question of how far countries were willing to sacrifice the integrity of the continent in their quest for knowledge and resources became apparent. Antarctica, with its fragile ecosystem, faced new threats, from pollution to the impact of tourism. The enigma surrounding Antarctica as a global laboratory is not limited to its scientific value. How can it be ensured that this international collaboration endures in the face of economic and political interests that threaten to fracture the established peace? The answer to this question becomes increasingly urgent as the world faces challenges that transcend borders. Against the backdrop of a continent that harbors ancient secrets and an uncertain future, Antarctica stands as a silent witness to human history. Through its vast stretches of ice, the influence of past expeditions resonates, inviting new generations to explore its mysteries. Yet, the question persists: can this global laboratory withstand the pressures of a changing world? As nations delve deeper into the study of the continent, a new challenge approaches. The international relations that have floated over the ice of Antarctica are becoming more complex, and the future of this invaluable laboratory intertwines with the diplomacy of ice. The next stage of our exploration will take us deeper into the political dynamics that influence the governance of this vast and mysterious continent. This crisis would soon manifest itself in the form of tensions and rivalries that would mark the governance of the frozen continent. Antarctica, a vast territory covered by an endless layer of ice, had become a stage where the interests of various nations clashed in a delicate balance. The search for resources, science, and geopolitics intertwined in a complex dance where each step could trigger unforeseen consequences. In this context, ice diplomacy became an essential tool for navigating the icy waters of international politics. As the 20th century progressed, the political climate of the world was in constant flux. The Second World War had left a trail of distrust and rivalries that would manifest in unexpected ways on the Antarctic continent. With the war, emerging powers were in a race not only for military supremacy, but also for control of unexplored resources and territories. As the world tried to recover from devastating losses, nations began to look southward, where the ice concealed secrets and opportunities. One of the key figures in this intricate web of relationships was the American President Harry S. Truman. Aware of the strategic importance of Antarctica, Truman pushed for Operation Highjump, an ambitious military and scientific exploration mission in 1946 and 1947. Although the operation officially aimed at scientific research, many saw it as an attempt to reaffirm the presence of the United States on a continent that promised to be a new front of influence. The question of whether it was merely a peace mission or if other interests were at play remained open. On the other side of the world, the Soviet Union was also weaving its own network of influence. Amid the Cold War, Soviet interest in Antarctica was not limited to science. It was, in part, an attempt to challenge American hegemony. With the establishment of research bases and active participation in negotiations, the Soviets sought to establish their presence on a continent that was shaping up to be an ideological battleground. Here, science mingled with politics in a game of frozen chess where every move counted. The year 1959 would mark a crucial turning point in this dynamic. The Antarctic Treaty, signed by 12 nations, established a framework for international cooperation that seemed on the surface an act of goodwill. However, the reality was more complex. The treaty not only prohibited military activities but also froze territorial claims at a time when many nations had interests in the continent. The question was whether this pact represented a breath of peace or a mere moratorium on a latent conflict. The decisions made during those days of Antarctic winter would resonate for decades. The creation of a space where science could thrive amid political rivalry was an admirable achievement. But it also posed a puzzle. How could such an inhospitable continent become a symbol of cooperation when its rulers were in a constant struggle for control? As the decades advanced, Antarctica transformed into a global laboratory, where scientists from various nations collaborated on research regarding climate, biodiversity, and natural resources. However, behind this facade of cooperation, tensions persisted. Countries continued to make claims over portions of the continent, while economic interests began to take center stage. The promise of the Antarctic Treaty was a noble ideal, but the shadow of human ambition continued to loom. The 80s and 90s brought with them a renewed interest in mineral and fishery resources, leading to the need for more effective and sustainable governance. Discussions about the exploitation of these resources became a hot topic in international meetings. Thus, the Madrid Protocol of 1991, which complemented the Antarctic Treaty, prohibited any activities related to mining, reaffirming the commitment to preserve the continent as a sanctuary of peace and science. But could it truly remain intact in a world where competition for resources is a constant? The decisions of the leaders of the time were marked by a moral dilemma, the desire to protect a natural treasure against the pressure of economic demands. In this context, the figure of the scientist became crucial, as their voice stood as a beacon of reason amid the chaos of politics. Many researchers began to advocate for conservation, arguing that the true value of Antarctica lay not in its resources but in its essential role in the balance of the global climate. Yet the enigma remained: how to ensure that the ideals of cooperation and peace prevailed in a continent where economic interests were so deeply rooted. The answer was not simple. Nations continued to watch each other's movements closely, and any sign of weakness could be exploited. Ice diplomacy became a game of appearances, where promises of collaboration often clashed with the realities of ambitious human desire. Today, Antarctica remains a place of mystery and discovery, a testament to humanity's ability to unite for a common goal. However, history has shown that peace on the continent is a delicate balance, susceptible to changes in global politics and economic urgencies. The question that lingers in the air is, how will these challenges be resolved in the future? In an increasingly interconnected world affected by climate change, the need for effective and fair governance in Antarctica is more crucial than ever. And as nations continue to negotiate in the cold conference rooms, the echo of nature cries out to be heard. As the shadows of the past intertwine with the present, a new chapter opens in the history of the White Continent. The mystery of its biodiversity and its role in the global ecosystem awaits to be unveiled. The voice of nature rises, and it is time to delve into the secrets that Antarctica still holds. That was the voice of nature resonating in the frozen silence of Antarctica, a pulsating echo of life in a continent that, at first glance, seems stripped of everything. However, recent research has revealed a hidden enigma. Antarctic biodiversity is not only rich and diverse, but it also plays a crucial role in the balance of the global ecosystem. This chapter will take us to discover the secrets of an environment as inhospitable as it is fascinating. where life clings tenaciously to its scarce opportunities for survival. As the 21st century progresses, knowledge about Antarctica has changed drastically. In recent decades, a growing number of scientific expeditions have explored not only the vast ice sheets and glaciers, but also the oceans surrounding the continent. In this context, a new interest in Antarctic biodiversity has emerged. From the tiny microorganisms that inhabit the ice to the majestic whales that glide through the icy waters, each discovery raises questions about the complexity of life in extreme conditions. The historical context preceding these findings is rooted in the scientific explorations of past decades, while the heroic expeditions of the 19th and 20th centuries focused on the conquest of frozen territories. Today's researchers have shifted their focus to studying the life that struggles to thrive in this extreme environment. The signing of the Antarctic Treaty in 1959 laid the groundwork for international cooperation in scientific research, a framework that allowed scientists from different nations to unite in the pursuit of knowledge. However, the importance of Antarctic biodiversity has taken on new meaning in a world facing unprecedented environmental crises. Among the key figures in this narrative are pioneers of marine research such as Dr. Ana Gonzalez, whose dedication to the study of marine ecosystems has shed light on the species that inhabit the frozen depths. Her work has revealed that in Antarctic waters, extraordinary creatures live, from krill, essential to the food chain, to species of fish and birds that have developed unique adaptations to survive in such an extreme habitat. Each discovery by Gonzalez and her team has been a building block in the understanding of how life in Antarctica is interconnected with the rest of the planet. The development of these events has been driven by advances in technology and international collaboration. The use of unmanned underwater vehicles, along with the collection of satellite data, has allowed scientists to map previously unexplored habitats. In 2019, a team of researchers discovered a vibrant ecosystem on the floor of the Ross Sea, where colonies of sponges and corals thrived in frigid waters. This finding not only challenged the conception that life in Antarctica was scarce, but also raised questions about the resilience of these ecosystems in the face of climate change. The immediate consequences of these discoveries are profound. Antarctic biodiversity acts as an indicator of the health of the planet. As glaciers melt and temperatures rise, the species that have survived for millennia face new threats. The loss of biodiversity in Antarctica could have global repercussions affecting ocean currents and consequently the climate in distant regions. The question that arises is whether we are truly prepared to face the consequences of the disappearance of these unique species. The enigma persists. What will happen if the voice of nature fades away forever? The question looming over Antarctica is not only about life in the present, but about the future we are building. As the scientific community delves deeper into the study of Antarctic biodiversity, the unsettling question arises: will we be able to protect these fragile ecosystems before it is too late? The key may lie in understanding their importance not only at the local level, but in the context of an interconnected global ecological system. As we approach the end of our exploration, this chapter leaves us with a sense of urgency and mystery. Antarctica is not just a vast desert of ice. It is a natural laboratory that holds secrets about life and survival in extreme conditions. The interdependence of its ecosystems with those of the entire world poses challenges that demand our attention and action. Are we willing to listen to the voice of nature before it becomes a distant echo? With this reflection, we prepare for the next chapter, where we will look toward the future of the White Continent. The question continues to resonate. How can we ensure that Antarctica is not just a frozen memory in time, but an example of conservation and hope in a changing world? In the vast silence of the White Continent, where the wind whispers ancient secrets, a question looms that has been present in the minds of explorers, scientists, and environmentalists for generations. What is the future of Antarctica? From the first expeditions that traced its contours on the map of the world, to contemporary efforts to understand its ecosystem, The history of this continent is a tale of discovery and caution, an enigma that invites us to reflect on the legacy we will leave for future generations. As the 21st century progresses, the political and social context surrounding Antarctica becomes a complex mosaic. The Antarctic Treaty of 1959, a monumental effort of international cooperation, has been the cornerstone of governance in this inhospitable territory. However, in recent decades, the increase in human activity, climate changes, and pressure for natural resources have generated tensions. The nations that once united in the spirit of peace and science now face ethical dilemmas regarding the exploitation of this continent. In a world where geopolitics is constantly being redefined, Antarctica finds itself at a crossroads. The main actors in this story are diverse. Governments such as those of the United States, Russia, and China have intensified their interests in the region, driven by the quest for resources and the desire to assert their scientific presence. The decision to expand bases and conduct explorations in search of minerals and fossil fuels poses a dilemma. Should we prioritize development and short-term prosperity, or protect this fragile ecosystem for the sake of humanity? The voices of political leaders resonate in the air, but behind them, scientists warn of the consequences of greed. In this tension-filled environment, events have unfolded that mark the course of exploration and conservation in Antarctica. The climate crisis, exacerbated by human activity, is revealing the fragility of its environment. The melting of glaciers, a phenomenon documented with increasing urgency, not only threatens local fauna and flora, but also has global repercussions. Recent studies have shown that the rise in sea levels caused by the melting of Antarctic ice could have devastating effects on the coasts of distant countries. The question persists: what future awaits Antarctica if its glaciers continue to retreat under the pressure of global warming? As science advances, key decisions become increasingly critical. International conferences on climate change, such as the Paris Summit, have included Antarctica in their agendas, but the implementation of effective policies is often hindered by conflicting interests. Can the nations of the world set aside their differences and unite in a comprehensive effort for the conservation of this unique continent? History has shown that cooperation can flourish even in the most inhospitable places. But time is running out. At the heart of this narrative lies a vital development: the recognition of Antarctica as a global laboratory for scientific research. Research stations, once symbols of rivalry, have now become centers of collaboration. From the study of microbial life in its ice to the analysis of changes in the atmosphere, the scientific community works tirelessly to unravel the mysteries that Antarctica still holds. However, as science progresses, a dilemma also arises. Can the knowledge gained be sufficient to save the region from the clutches of exploitation? The immediate consequences of these decisions are palpable. Antarctic fauna, from penguins to seals, faces unprecedented challenges. Ocean acidification and rising water temperatures are disrupting the food chain, endangering not only local species but also global marine ecosystems. The echo of this crisis resonates in the hearts of those who have dedicated their lives to studying and protecting Antarctica. As a civilization, we face the question of whether we will allow these species to disappear, letting their legacy dissolve in the vast ocean of history. As the chapter of Antarctica moves toward the future, an enigma persists. Exploration and conservation seem to be two sides of the same coin. But is it possible to find a balance? History has shown us that humanity has the capacity to adapt and change, but it has also demonstrated that sometimes decisions are made that harm the common good. Antarctica, with its unparalleled beauty and critical importance to the global climate system, faces an uncertain fate. The future of the White Continent is not just an academic interest. It is a call to action, a reminder that every decision we make today has repercussions for generations to come. Antarctica is a mirror that reflects our priorities and values as a society. What legacy do we want to leave? The answer may be hidden in the very essence of exploration. the innate desire to discover, understand, and protect. At this crossroads, the story of Antarctica intertwines with our own decisions and actions. With every step we take forward, we must remember that the mystery of this continent does not reside solely in its geography, but in how we choose to care for it. The shadow of climate change looms over us, but the light of hope shines in cooperation and understanding. As we close this chapter, the final question hangs in the air. Will we be able to write a new narrative for Antarctica, one that celebrates its legacy and ensures its future? In the end, the answer depends on us, on our ability to listen to the echo of history and act accordingly. Because in the end, true exploration is not just about discovering new worlds, but about protecting the ones we already know.